All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Um, I really enjoy sharing tools that have been meaningful to me with other people, things that have helped me in my personal and spiritual development. And so today I'm going to share with you a particular tool that has been very, very helpful to me over the last several years in just understanding myself better and just help me deepen my spiritual development. And if this goes according to plan, I'll talk for about 15 minutes. Then we're actually together. We are going to practice using this tool for 10 or 15 minutes. And then there'll be plenty of time left to just go into the regular silence that we keep with one another. And then after that, we'll have a good amount of time for sharing as well. So I'd like us all to start just by closing our eyes and just bringing our awareness to our feet on the floor, our seat in the chair, our spine against the back of the chair. Bringing our awareness to our feet and our seat and our spine brings about a sense of grounding for ourselves. And this will help support the work that we're going to be doing today. And we can deepen that sense of grounding by taking 3 to 5 breaths at whatever pace is good for you. But just see if you can really track your breath from the instant it enters your nostrils, heads down into your lungs, and then pauses, reverses direction, and heads back up out your nostrils again. Just take a few quiet moments just to really pay attention to your breath coming in and out. You can utilize this little practice anytime that you think it would be helpful, just creating that sense of grounding for yourself and paying attention to your breath. It can really help calm your central nervous system. Okay. So over the last few weeks of heart-to-heart talks, we have been encouraged to look inward. Today, we're going to explore one way of looking inward and really just explore, what does that even mean, looking inward? Because for some of us, that is not a natural thing that we do. So a few weeks ago, Viviane gave a talk, and she spoke about the evolution of human consciousness. And she said that humanity, having conquered the outer world, now needs to turn its attention to understanding the inner world. And she also did mention that it took 6 million years for us to conquer the outer world. So in terms of getting comfortable and proficient at looking inward, it might be good to be a little bit patient. 2 weeks ago, Joe talked about working with our suffering. And he encouraged us to own our emotions and to work with them in 3 ways, which we've heard about, over and over now the last few weeks. But just to review, the first one is to refrain. And by that, he means refrain from reacting. And that little breathing practice that I just gave us is maybe a tool to use there. The second one was called relaxing, and that involved pausing and breathing, so we don't just jump and react in the moment. And then the third one he called relating, which he explained as tracking our emotions back. And so today, what I want to do is focus on the third piece, tracking our emotions back. What does that mean? And how can we possibly work with that idea? So several years ago, Joe introduced me to a guy named Eugene Gendlin. And Eugene created a 6-step process for how to look inward. And he called the process focusing. And he published a book on it called Focusing. And it's a very accessible, very easy to read book. And so if this is something you decide you want to explore a little bit more after today, his book I would definitely recommend. So I'm a type 3 on the Enneagram, and looking inward is not natural for me. I have all of my attention focused on accomplishing and doing. Those are my top priorities. And so they always take precedent over everything else. So, and actually, I always thought that emotions were terribly messy and just got in the way. And so I always did my best to steer clear of them and pretty much ignore them. And it turns out I'm not the only person who may have trouble turning inward, because in a recent Enneagram training I attended, Russ Hudson, who was one of the instructors, made these 2 points. The first thing he said was, we have an instinctual aversion to what doesn't feel good. And of course, that makes a lot of sense. Who likes to spend time feeling bad? But it gets in the way of perhaps, easily being able to turn inward and figure out what's going on inside. And the second thing he said, and I think this is very helpful, is that when we were infants, things that felt good to us, things like being fed, being cuddled, getting our diapers changed, being soothed when we were upset, all of these things came from external sources. So we have been conditioned since we were babies that what is outside of me is where pleasure lies and where satisfaction resides, rather than looking inward and acknowledging that happiness is an inside job, as Joe continues to remind us. So, back to me for a second, even though I was avoiding my emotions, I was aware enough to know that I was stuffing my emotions down. But I was just too afraid to let myself feel my emotions. I was afraid if I let myself feel my emotions, I would get stuck there and never find my way back out. I ended up having 2 frozen shoulders, and at different times. And the practitioner who helped me work to address my frozen shoulders said something which really caught my attention, which was that all of the unresolved grief that I had not dealt with was backing up from my heart into my chest and my shoulders. And I mean, it made a lot of sense to me at the time, and it caused me to get more serious about learning how to work with my emotions in a productive way. And really going to some of Joe's retreats was the first work that I did. And he created a very supportive, safe place for me to examine my emotions over a period. I used to go to Joe's 5-day retreats, and it would take me that long, both to get comfortable, spending time with my emotions, and then working my way through them. But somewhere along the way, Joe introduced me to Eugene Gendlin in this focusing practice, and it helped me so much because I'm a very literal person. And so I like these, very clear step-by-step instructions that Eugene gives in his process. It just, I don't know, it gave me sort of some confidence that, I had a way to both get in, but then get back out. So it was very, very helpful to me. So I want to bring in just a few ideas about curiosity before we actually look at Eugene's process, because I think, thinking back on it, Jill shared these things in her talk last week, but it made me think back that cultivating curiosity is a very important tool for us to be able to do focusing effectively. And actually, Joe said something a few weeks ago, and I can't remember the context of it, but what he said was, be more curious than afraid. And that really resonated me just because of my own fear of working with my emotions. In her talk, Jill said, curiosity is the doorway to compassion. And I think it's probably safe to say that it's a challenge for all of us to demonstrate compassion for other people at times. But it might be even more challenging for us to give compassion to ourselves. I grew up thinking I needed to be hard on myself. Otherwise, I might become a ne'er-do-well or not live up to my potential. Nobody ever taught me to have compassion for myself. It's really, and if they did, I probably would have batted that idea away, thinking, no, that's not right. It's only been in the past few years that I have realized how important it is to learn to have compassion for myself. And then something else beautiful that Jill said in her talk last week was that curiosity creates the possibility of bringing forth something new. And I have to say, not every time when I practice focusing, but a lot of times, something surprising springs forth from that time that I spend looking inward. And so, I just want you to keep that part in mind. So what is focusing per Eugene Gendlin? It's not maybe the typical way we think about defining focusing, although I do think there's a tie-in. Before I tell you exactly what it is, let me just say a couple things here. So the standard human way of trying to process challenging situations for many of us is thinking, right? We try to think about it and try to work out a solution for how to move forward. But I think a lot of what we're doing when we say that we're thinking is we're actually ruminating. We're going over and over and over the same thoughts again and again, not necessarily really getting any new insights or ideas about it. I don't think that just using a thinking approach to challenging situations necessarily helps us to discharge energy associated with them, metabolize that energy, or integrate that into something useful in our lives. The focusing process guides us to shift our attention away from thinking, away from working in our minds, and to shift our attention from our minds down into our bodies and just ask the question, when I think about or have this situation in mind, what is happening in my body? And is that something that would be useful for me to work through? Because we know this, we have had experiences of using our intuition, like new thought or insight arises. And, we call that our intuition. Eugene Gendlin calls it the wisdom that we can tap into from our bodies. And so that's what this practice is all about. And I've actually come to believe now, having practiced this for many years, that when my body is experiencing a strong emotion or sensation, that is actually a signal from my body that it wants my attention. It wants me to go inward to see what it has to tell me. So in a nutshell, what the focusing process is about is simply shifting your attention from your mind down into your body and asking, what does the situation feel like in my body? And then trying to come to it with a sense of curiosity and self-compassion and give attention to whatever those physical sensations are that you're experiencing. And then asking that part of your body that is experiencing these strong emotions or physical sensations what it wants to tell you. So I have 3 more things I want to say, and then we're going to practice. The word emotion is, this is an idea I have. The word emotion is a label that we put on different types of energy that we feel in our bodies. Some are positive labels and some are negative labels. But it's the energy that in the focusing process, it's the energy that we want to pay attention to, not the label. It's fine to start with the label. You could have a situation in mind and you shift your attention down in your body and you say, oh, I feel so sad, or I'm so angry. And that's a fine place to start. But then let go of the label and say, let me describe this energy to myself. It feels heavy. It feels dense. It feels dark. It feels whatever, however it feels, hot, cold, whatever. Try to use actual descriptors for the energy versus labels that we traffic in all the time. They're kind of shorthand when we're talking to ourselves or talking to other people. Secondly, some people have trouble feeling any physical sensations in their bodies. And if that's what happens to you, just acknowledge that. I don't feel anything. Just kind of say that to yourself. Right now, I don't feel anything. Let me go back and look again and see if there's something that's cropping up. And maybe it's just something you notice with your breathing, or maybe it's some sensation that you feel in your body. But if you don't feel anything, don't make yourself wrong for it. Just sit with that. I don't feel anything. On the flip side, some people may feel very intense energy, almost overwhelming. And if that is the case, simply shift your awareness to your breathing, like we practiced at the beginning. Just really try to track your breathing coming in and down and up and out for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 breaths. And then when things settle down a little bit, then you can go back to paying attention to what's inside your body. Okay. So now we're going to practice this together. And if you watch the talk that I gave in October, there weren't very many people who could connect in that day because we had all sorts of technical issues. But if you watch that talk that I gave in October, which was also about focusing, I kept us all together for all 6 steps. But today, everybody doesn't move at the same pace. So today, what I'm going to do is we're all going to work through the first step together. And then I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to put up a document. And it has the other 5 steps on it. And there's a lot of words there. But for each step, there's one sentence that's bolded. So if you don't want to get caught up in all the words, just read what is bolded. But if you like all the words, you can simply read through and go at your own pace. It should not take more than, 10 or 15 minutes, but we're going to take about 30 minutes. So maybe not quite that long. Maybe 25 minutes for the whole thing, because I want you to have a little silence after you finish it. So you're just going to go through at your own pace. But let's all start together with step 1 by closing our eyes. And then for the rest of the steps, you can look at the screen, you can close your eyes. If you want to write out responses, you can do that. But the first step that I want you to do is to just ask yourself this question. What are all the things that are keeping me from feeling absolutely wonderful today, right now? What are all the things that are keeping me from feeling absolutely wonderful today in this moment? Just touch on each one lightly. As they come up, just say, yeah, that's one. Let it go. See what else is there. And we'll just take a couple of minutes of silence here. After you finish your list of everything that's keeping you from feeling absolutely wonderful today, then choose just one of those things to use for the rest of the practice. And then we'll just park the other ones off to the side. Doesn't mean we're going to forget about them, but we're just kind of clearing some space to just focus on the one that you want to work with today. It could be the one that's bothering you most, or you could just simply choose the one that you're most interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Jill, I cannot see the bottom of my, oh, well, maybe it will just work like that. There we go. So select one and then just continue to work through these other steps. And we'll take about 25 minutes, so you have plenty of time.